there is a tissue, right? There is a very important tissue in our body which okay, let me write first of all its name, then I will tell you. Muscular tissue. We have a tissue in our body which is called muscular tissue. Why we call it muscular tissue? Because this tissue in our body has certain contractile filaments which shows contraction and relaxation phenomena, right? So what is muscular tissue? This is a tissue in our body, and that I will discuss later in a big detail, don't worry. A tissue which contains contractile filament, right friends? Contractile filaments. And what are those contractile filaments? We will discuss them later, right? So for right now you should just remember that we have a tissue in our body which is called muscular tissue. And what is muscular tissue? Muscular tissue is a type of tissue which contains contractile filaments, and those filaments actin and myosin filaments, right? So muscular tissue we have, look here we have muscles. In our body we have lots of muscles, and these muscles are called muscular tissue, right? So how many types of muscular tissue we have in our body? We have 3 types of muscular tissue in our body. And what are those? Those are the cardiac muscles, right? We have cardiac muscles. Then we have skeletal muscles. We have in our body skeletal muscles, and then we have smooth muscles, right friends? And all these muscles in our body have the phenomena, perform the phenomena of contraction and relaxation. I will discuss it later in the section while we will discuss about this tissue in big detail, right? So we have muscular tissue in our body, the first type. And the muscular tissues are cardiac muscles, skeletal muscle tissue, and smooth muscle tissue. And all these tissues contain these contractile filaments. This is a just introductory lecture about the tissues, right? Then we have another type of tissue in our body, right friends? That is called the nervous tissue. The second one. And what is nervous tissue? Very simple. A tissue, right? Let me put a piece here. This is a piece of nervous tissue, right? And in this piece we should have cells, right? So in this piece of nervous tissue we have nerve cells, right? These are nerve cells, right? And then we also have certain other cells with them, with these nerve cells, right? These nerve cells, I will give you example. These are called the nerve cells, okay? And the other cells, the green and the red cells which are present with them, these are called the glial cells. So we say these are glial cells. That's so simple. What is nervous tissue? Nervous tissue is a tissue in our body which is composed of nerve cells and glial cells. That's so simple, right? So the nerve cells and the glial cells, both of them will combine and they will make a tissue which we call as nervous tissue. So simple, right? And we also call them neurons, right? And then we have 6 types of these glial cells. We will discuss them and while we will discuss about the nervous tissue in detail, right? So what is nervous tissue? A tissue which is composed of neurons and glial cells. This is called nervous tissue. That's so simple. And we know we have this nervous tissue in our body. Done. We can also say that the nervous tissue in our body is a tissue which take sensory impulses, coordinate them and bring back motor responses, Right, friends, we can define it also in that manner. What is nervous tissue? The type of tissue which collects sensory impulses from all parts of the body, coordinate them and sends back motor impulses. That tissue is called nervous tissue. How? Let me make a diagram here for your understanding. Please focus. This is a person, right, standing here. In his body, in his whole body, a tissue is present. First of all, in here, this is his spinal cord and this is his brain. This brain and this spinal cord is made up of nervous tissue. And then from this brain and spinal cord, there are nerves which are distributed all over his body. And what do? These nerves will collect information from all of parts of his body. They will bring to the brain and spinal cord, they will coordinate them, and they will generate back motor impulses. Right? So we say, what is nervous tissue? A tissue which collect sensory informations, right? Sensory informations are collected. Then what happens next? Coordinate them, done. This was the second point. And sends back motor impulse. This tissue in your body is called the nervous tissue, right? So this was the definition. What? A tissue which collects sensory information, right, then coordinate them and sends back motor impulses. We call this tissue as your nervous tissue, and this tissue is present in our body. We know brain, spinal cord, nerves, spinal nerves, cranial nerves, all of them are nervous tissue, right? Let's go for the third type of tissue which is present in our body, right? That is the epithelial tissue. Epithelial tissue. What is epithelial tissue? So simple, friends. Let me define it. If you focus here in this tissue, or you focus here in this tissue, you can see in between these cells there are very much gaps present, right? You can see here in these cells there are intracellular spaces present, right? But we have a tissue in our body in which the cells are very close to each other. This is one cell, this is other cell, and this is other cell, and these cells are very close to each other, right? So we said that tissue is called the epithelial tissue. Now let me define the epithelial tissue. Let me make here an epithelial tissue, then we will define it. Look, this is a piece of epithelial tissue, right? And if we see here, these are the cells of the epithelial tissue, right? These are the cells. And if you look here very carefully, right, these are the cells of this tissue. So if you look carefully, this is one cell. Let me share it please for you guys. This is one cell, right? Next to it there is the other cell. Next to it there is the other cell, and you can see that in between these two adjacent cells, for example, if I take it here, this is one cell, right, and here is the other cell, right, like this. These are the two cells. Now you can see in between these two cells there are no or very less intercellular space, right? So this type of tissue which is present in our body, we call it the epithelia or epithelial tissue. What is epithelial tissue? The type of tissue which is made up of cells which are arranged in such a manner that the cells are uniting together and they have no intracellular spaces, or we say these cells are closely packed cells, right? They have no intracellular spaces. Let me write here. A type of a tissue which is composed of closely packed cells. Such type of tissue is called the epithelial tissue, or we call it epithelia, right? So once again friends, let's do another definition. What is epithelial tissue? A type of tissue which has no or very less intracellular spaces. Let me write here. A tissue having no or very less intercellular spaces. Such type of tissue is called epithelial tissue in our body, right? We will have a separate lecture on the epithelial tissue also. It's just an introduction to the tissues, friends, right? Then there is the third type of tissue, which the fourth one,